The classic tip jar sitting on the counter of your favorite local pizzeria, coffee shop, or bakery. It represents a simple, unspoken agreement between a customer and a frontline worker. You leave $1 or two to say thank you to the hourly employee who handcrafted your food, tossed the dough, or rushed your food during a hectic work shift. But what happens when that money isn't actually going to the staff? What happens when a hidden policy systematically drains that jar from the top down, diverting your hard-earned tips into the pockets of the people running the business? First, under the Federal Code 29C.F.R. Section 531.54b, an employer, manager, or supervisor is strictly prohibited from keeping, taking, or participating in an employee tip pool. Fact sheet number 15B. Managers and supervisors under the Fair Labor Standard Act, FLSA, U.S. Department of Labor, quote, "It does not matter if it's voluntary tip, a credit card tip, or a physical cash jar. Tips are absolute property of the non-managerial staff who earn them." But here's the exact trap my employer fell into, and it's the biggest myth in food service: the working manager myth. Fact sheet number 15B. Managers and supervisors under the Fair Labor Standard Act, FS, U.S. Department of Labor, they cannot wear two hats. They cannot be manager when it comes time to hand out orders, and they cannot be a regular worker when it comes time to dig into the tip jar. The only time a manager can keep a tip in the state of Oregon if the customer hands it to them directly for a service that the manager personally and solely provided from start to finish without a single shred of help from the hourly staff, or if the manager is the sole worker on shift. The United States Department of Labor explicitly addresses this. The law states that a manager's specific floor duties on a single floor shift do not change their legal status. The federal government uses a work week test. If an employer has supervisory powers, meaning they write the weekly schedules, they have the authority to hire, fire, or discipline staff, they are legally classified as a manager for the entire work week. Many bosses believe that if a manager just rolls up their sleeves, works a register, tosses some dough, or scrubs down a line during a busy rush, they magically earn the rights to take a share of tip pools for those hours. Armed with this exact information, I decided to do something rare in food service. I decided to bring it up to my boss, privately, nicely, and professionally. I wanted to give my employer a safe landing. I assumed it was just an honest mistake, misunderstanding of complex state regulations. So I sent a message to the owner, Rachel. I was respectful, polite, and completely cooperative. But look how she responded. This text message was what legal experts call a smoking gun. Quote from Rachel: "The situation stands that an owner can make tip pooling the rule, so long as managers are not simply overseeing, collecting from positions that are not working. Since management does everything and more than our regular employees, they can receive tips through pooling, especially because we don't have a way for individual tips because we don't split register counts our customers." From Rachel, quote, "We don't have a way to track down individual tips because we don't split register counts," end quote. Now let's dismantle that excuse right now. A lack of tracking technology is not a legal defense. If your restaurant lacks the infrastructure to separate transaction, the law does not say, "Go ahead, give the money to management." Read that again. She explicitly admitted in writing to running a mandatory tip pooling system that directly pays management out of pocket from employee funds. And her secondary excuse? The law says that tip pools must be split exclusively among eligible hourly staff. By typing this out, she provided irreversible proof of willful wage violation. I told her I appreciated the information, and I stepped back. I didn't argue. I didn't cause a scene. But the countdown clock has already started. Exactly 1 week after I raised a valid documented question about state and federal labor compliance, the narrative suddenly flipped, and I was abruptly fired in person. Let's look at the justification text sent by management at 9:14 a.m. the next day. Quote from Rachel. Shay, it's really very simple. You weren't able to do the job at the level we need. The night crew feels like they have to pull extra weight when working with you, and we have to keep reteaching you the same things again. And if at this point it gets busy in the summer and you struggle, then when fall comes around, it won't work for you at all. End quote. But notice what just happened here. This is what textbook legal strategy called employer pretext. When an employer realizes they are violating labor laws and wants to just get rid of a whistleblower, they almost never say, I'm firing you for reporting me. No, instead, they suddenly manufacture a history of poor performance and training issues out of thin air just to cover their tracks. But look at my immediate response in the text thread. I pushed back instantly. I pointed out the absolute contradictions. I've been showing up every single night, proactively asking managers on duty what I can do to improve upon, and every single night I was told I was doing great, improving, and handling rushes effectively. There was zero write-ups, zero verbal warnings, zero documented performance reviews. Nothing changed about my performance over those 7 days. The only thing that's changed was that I pointed out their tip policy was illegal. And when I pressed her for a single shred of proof on that specific moment of these alleged performance issues, she hit a wall. She stopped trying to defend herself, performance narratives, and dropped this final text from Rachel. Quote, my accountant confirms, and my attorney has advised me to stop responding. Also, I will file a telephonic harassment charges if you keep texting and calling me. End quote. Now let's think about that. Attorneys don't just simply tell their clients to stop talking because they did everything right. Attorneys tell their clients to shut up the exact moment they look at a text log, realize their client has committed any illegal act, violated whistleblower protections, and is actively digging a multi-$1,000 legal hole in writing. And the threat of harassment charges, it's an empty intimidation tactic. Asking your employer for a clear explanation of an abrupt firing and presenting them with official labor guidelines is a protective activity. It is not harassment. Shortly after, the other shift manager, Bob, he texted me trying to reinforce the performance narrative. So I dropped the final hammer. I texted back citing the exact federal regulatory codes. 29 C.F.R. Section 531.54b, and informed them that both the complete and unedited timeline and screenshots were already in the hands of state investigators. But they forgot who they were dealing with. This isn't my first time holding a predatory employer accountable, and it won't be my last. Here's exactly what I did in the first 24 hours of being terminated. First, I preserved every single screenshot, timestamp, and schedule log in a secure off-site backup. Second, I logged directly into the Oregon Bully portal and filed a formal wage theft claim to recover my personal share of the $3,000 stolen from our staff tip jar over those 3 months. Third, I filed a separate severe civil rights retaliation complaint for wrongful termination. Under Oregon law, employers who file whistleblowers face massive financial penalties, including paying out back wages, front wages, stationary penalty liquidations, and finally, I immediately set up my claim with the Oregon Employment Department for unemployment benefits. because being fired for exposing an illegal workplace policy is legally classified as termination without misconduct. They claimed it was standard hourly distribution. They argued because managers logged the longest shift in the restaurant, their hourly circulation naturally scaled up. But because they were there from open to close, that hourly rate loophole meant that management ended up pocketing over $3,000 from the hourly staff pool in just a 90-day window. I decided to look into the actual law, and what I found changed everything. Let's get something perfectly clear right out of the gate, because restaurant owners love to muddy these waters. Under the Federal Fair Labor Standards Act, or FLSA, the rules surrounding tips are absolute. Let's break down the law piece by piece so you know your rights. Welcome back to my channel. I'm doomed to play. Today, we are breaking down a story that started in a local kitchen and ended up in the hands of state labor investigators. This isn't just a story about a bad shift or a frustrating boss. This is a step-by-step breakdown of how systematic wage theft operates in a modern restaurant industry, and how corporate excuses are used to justify illegal practices, and how exactly what happens when an employee dares to read a legal code and speak up. For 3 months, I worked at a local calzone and cookie shop. The business was busy. The crew, solid. The tip jar, active 7 days a week, averaging about $100 a day. On paper, it looked like a standard, functioning fast food service job. But beneath the surface, there was a math problem that just didn't add up. Management was taking an exact 1/3 cut of that tip jar every single day. And how did they justify it?
Well, let's go ahead and talk about just the nitty-gritty stuff that is outside the main facts and all that stuff. My big question to you to start off this is, what's your big takeaway from this?
I would say my biggest takeaway from this is don't be afraid to stand up for your rights. Even if you're afraid of losing your job, honestly, it's more important for these workplace employers to know that us employees are willing to stand for our rights, so they'll be less willing to violate them.
Alright, I like that. Next question. If there was something you could do differently, what would you do in those moments?
Honestly, when talking to them afterwards, I wish I definitely kept my responses much shorter, because that would definitely help me legally later on. Making things cleaner and shorter is the best thing for you to do for yourself in a conversation if you know you're going to be bringing this later up in court.
And mind you, feelings are valid.
Even if your feelings are agitated, try to keep yourself in cool, collected as you can, and cleanly speaking in those moments, because words can be used against you.
I agree with that 100%. Do you think approaching them sooner benefited or made things worse?
Honestly, I don't think it honestly matters too much on when you had to approach the bosses on this kind of situation. Regardless of timing, if your boss is not a person who is going to accept these things amicably, they're going to often try to throw out the person causing the problems and speaking up.
That's fair. Another question that also came to mind. What tipped you off to the tips?
It actually took a while for me to start to realize that my rights were being violated. They kept their side of collecting the tips a little under wraps. It wasn't until I started noticing like stacks of dollar bills in their backpacks, and then I asked it more directly about how tips were being split, that I finally understood how my rights were being violated.
So, I believe, if I remember, we and you went in there same day, a few hours before, just to grab a couple of sodas. Hell, even borrowed $30 from Bob himself, but didn't even say anything then. They waited until you came in that day.
No, they could have informed me, but typically I understand that. It's standard protocol to wait until the employee's shift to bring them off-site workplace to and then inform them that they're fired, either that or through text message, which I would have preferred earlier in the day rather than waiting until my shift started. That way my whole day could not have been wasted on waiting for that. But honestly, it is what it is.
Truly.
I am making this video today for one primary reason: to show every food worker, delivery driver, barista, and line cook watching this that you have power. Bad bosses rely on your silence. They rely on the fast-paced chaos of busy restaurant to skim the cash off the top, assuming that you need the shift too badly to ever read labor codes. But when you document your workplace and keep a proper paper trail and refuse to be intimidated, the law is on your side. Doko chose to break the law in writing, and now they're going to have to answer directly to state investigators. The investigation is officially underway, and my files are locked in. Now, if you want to see this case unfold, see the final ruling from bully investigators, and watch a real labor dispute play out from start to finish, make sure to smash that like button. Make sure to leave a comment below with your thoughts on this text thread, and hit subscribe to follow the journey on Doom to Play. Now, know your worth, protect your tips, and I'll see you in the next video.